The indigos are bringing back our heritage. They're bringing back the knowledge. And I know this, and I know it intimately, because I'm one of them. I'm one of the indigos. There's 3 types we'll talk about later. I'm a type 1. And I'm not the only one. There's 350 like me right now, and there's like 2,500,000 of type 3. So there's a lot of indigos here already. Okay? When I speak about indigos, I'm not speaking about somebody told me something about indigos and I'm passing on to you. I know what it's like to be raised in an indigo body here. I know what the indigo body means and what the gene code is doing. So I'm speaking from the heart as well as the mind when I talk about this stuff. We need to understand how our DNA functions. If we're going to understand how the DNA of the indigos differs from that of human, why they are considered, even though they birthed through human bodies, why, through human parents, why they are considered literally a hybrid ET race. There is a distinct difference in their gene code. And I've done diagrams in these chart packs to show you that difference, because it becomes really apparent when you have the spatial relationships in the visual diagrams. So we'll see that in a little bit. Now, let's see. Okay, we need to also, if we're going to understand the whole process, our ascension process, to understand indigos, we need to understand our ascension process. We've been through these teachings in parts in other workshops. This is like a quick roundup, and especially if anybody that hasn't been to the other workshops, this is the crash course in DNA ascension mechanics. So you get that by the wayside as you learn about indigos. All right, you have biology and consciousness, which are matter and spirit, are intimately intertwined. They're composed of the same substance. This is what science doesn't get either. Consciousness, our bodies, matter particles, are made of units of consciousness. That is the only substance that really exists in the universe. Consciousness is a substance. It can be quantified. It can be grouped. It can be structured. It is not a byproduct of matter particles interrelating with each other. It is not a byproduct of brain chemicals firing in certain sequences that give you the ability to think you're alive. It starts first. Matter, the experience of matter, is built on a core of consciousness. Consciousness is energy, and at least science acknowledges that energy cannot be created or destroyed. It just changes form. Consciousness cannot be created or destroyed. It just changes form. This is what the whole thing is about. Energy is consciousness, and consciousness is energy. Science knows energy's always existed. They can't figure out where before energy what was there. There was no before energy, or there would be not now. It gets into those really riddle-like questions: which came first, chicken or the egg? Who knows? Because somehow they just always existed, and are representations of each other at different phases. So anyway, if we acknowledge that biology and consciousness are composed of the same substance, we begin to realize this is a part of our mind. We begin to realize that the higher parts of ourselves we don't see are part of our body. We have 15-dimensional anatomy that we're not taught about in health class. We need to be taught about this stuff. I mean, we might learn how to brush our teeth and comb our hair and exercise and do all those good things to keep your physical matter body healthy. But it's like knowing you have a thumb and not realizing you have a hand, an arm, and a whole body with a head and a brain to go with it. This is what's happening and what we're taught about our bodies. We have a 15-dimensional identity structure, which is a 15-dimensional biological structure with 5 harmonics of matter density. We need to learn this if we're going to help indigos. Because the awakening process, the process by which a soul who comes in here and then has the ability to awaken, to remember who it was before so it can remember what it came to do, requires a knowledge of the 15-dimensional identity. You come in here, the gene code shuts down. Those levels of consciousness that were in the higher fields block out. The gene code blocks them out. If you don't have the mechanics here available, say, okay, when that happens, here's how you fix it. Here's how you open up the gene code to bring the rest of you back in. You just stay that way. Indigos are going to stay lost. And that will be a real shame if that happens, because a lot of them are just going to backfire, and they're going to be like firecrackers holding too much energy, and they're just going to explode. Others are just going to fade and just drop the bodies and leave if they can't awaken. A lot of them go into drugs in the teens because it numbs them. They feel things that they can't put words on yet, and they don't have a belief framework to understand themselves yet. They try to think they're normal. After a while, they realize they differ. They realize they pick up on things that their peers are not picking up on. They realize that all these competitive sports in school, indigos tend to go, how archaic. It's like, the old days when they fed people to the lions for fun. Indigos tend to carry a consciousness with them, even if they can't verbalize it. of aversion to a lot of these things. Type 3s can be competitive, but most of them are just beyond that kind of stuff. And they feel different, but they don't have a framework to understand why they're different or what they're supposed to do with that fact. It gets to be very painful, not to mention the fact that they're so sensitive to electromagnetic frequency that standing by like Xerox machines or being in trains that are, electrical trains or any of these things that normal people just don't have a problem with affects them. I used to ride, when I'd ride in a car, the vibration of the motor of the engine would make me physically sick. And it would take me 2 hours of recalibrating my fields and like just curling up in a ball and bringing my energy back in to neutralize what simply the vibration from car engines would do. Imagine what indigos living under high-power wires are experiencing. Their bodies go into mutation. They get cancers more easily from it. These children are sensitive to all sorts of things that average people aren't. We'll cover some of that as we get into understand more of who they are. The most important thing I want to get across first is who they are and how that can be possible. By showing you the frameworks of DNA, of multidimensionality, and reminding you how those pieces fit together. That is saying, what I'm going to say next, this is how it's possible. So before I say what I want to say about the indigos, and you go, oh yeah, right, I've already given you a framework to understand where that can be a very rational choice to believe. So that's why I do it this way. I try to break the information down in a way that your logical mind, that just like everybody's logical mind here has been programmed in a certain way by society that, well, if this, and this aren't met, then it's not real to me. I won't listen. I want people to listen about the indigos and understand who they are, so I have to give the framework. So you can say, well, I don't know if I believe it yet, but I see how it could be possible. If she's right about dimensional structure and DNA and all that stuff, it really could be happening, couldn't it? So that's the level of opening that I want to make in the consciousness. The people